Hi, I'm Damon from Haldimand Motors. I'm here with Graeme. He is Windecker Road Films, and I hear he's got an exciting new project to talk to us about.
I do. I just finished a 6-part documentary series about the Black history in the Canfield and Cayuga area. Just finished it a couple of weeks ago, so I'd love to tell you more.
Sure. Well, let's go into this vehicle here and let's go hear about it.
Sounds great.
Well, I want to thank you, Graeme, for taking this time to talk to us about your upcoming project. Would you mind telling me more about your Canfield Roots project that you have?
Yeah, no problem. We're on our way to Canfield right now. So Canfield Roots is a 6-part documentary series. It's all about some of the Black history that we've sort of been uncovering a little bit over the last little while in the Canfield area. It's not super well known. I think it's a kind of a local thing. Everybody knew that there were Black families who had lived in the area for years and years and years, generations really, but it wasn't widely known outside of the area. And so, you know, I started working with the historian in Dunnville, Sylvia Weaver, and she was really the catalyst to pull all the research together and start telling these really interesting stories. And there are tons of interesting stories that sort of flow out of these family histories in the Canfield area. Lots of stories about freedom seekers, for example. So yeah, that's sort of the Coles Notes version of it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Tons of detail.
Yeah, who would know that that type of information or history would be in this area? Mm-hmm. Like you said, most people didn't realize that there was a big Black movement in this area.
I was really shocked actually because when we moved out here, I've been out here about 7 years, moved from Hamilton, we bought a converted church, and I didn't really know much about the church that I'd bought, so that's how I met Sylvia and Don Weaver. Don's family had gone to our church, so they came over for tea, and Don told me about going to Sunday school at this church that I lived in now. Then suddenly Sylvia goes into all these stories about George Phillips and Stephanie and Lucy Street, all these Black families in the area, and I went, wow, like, is there anything left of them? And there isn't much left. Many of the houses are gone. The families have all moved away over time, and then she kind of got a little bit more focused on this abandoned cemetery in the area where some of the freedom seekers and their descendants are buried.
Oh wow!
And it's on private property. It still is on private property, and it really became fascinating to me. So that was sort of the genesis, the motivating part. There was this sort of idea of untold history, untold stories, things that people know about but they're not written down. Yeah. I'm really fascinated by things like that anywhere I go, right?
Would you mind telling me more about these freedom seekers that came up this way?
Absolutely, no problem. So I think probably the most well documented in this area are the Street family, Stephanie and Lucy Street, who are buried right over there. And Lucy came up from West Virginia. Both her and Stephanie, her husband, were on plantations down there. They were slaves, and Lucy escaped with 3 children in tow and traveled north from the Ohio River up to the Ashtabula area, and then hopped on a schooner and came across Lake Erie out to the Amherstburg area, and eventually traveled around to St. Catharines. St. Catharines was a location that had a lot of support for freedom seekers who were coming up. There were churches there. There was William Hamilton Merritt. He was an abolitionist, and they had a lot of support in the business community and just aid societies and stuff like that. So from there, she apparently advertised for her husband. I don't know how you do that. Like, we put an ad in the newspaper saying, wanted one missing husband. But they got reunited, and then they moved out right to this property right here. This is the old North Cayuga Baptist Church right here. And they were among the founders of that original church, and they donated this land for the church. So this was their property right here. And eventually they owned 300 acres of land, which is astounding to think of.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You start with some people who were considered property, right? And then for them to own that much land and farm it, they were farmers, and their descendants, prospered. They intermarried with other families. They moved out of the community over time, but they really built a foundation here, and so they're buried right over there. Oh, wow. And how we know about them, I mean, aside from the fact that there's been photos taken of their gravesite for years, decades. Their daughter Henrietta dictated the family history to her son back in the 1930s, and he typed it all out. and donated it to the Cayuga Museum. George Phillips was a freedom seeker who lived across the road, across Talbot Road, Highway 3, from the streets, and he apparently floated across the Niagara River at Buffalo on a log.
Oh, wow.
He apparently had 12 kids in the U.S., and then when he came up here, he had 11 more. So he was a busy guy. And I'm not sure if they ever reunited, right? Which is sort of the other, one of the other really tragic stories about, slavery and the evil that was, is how it separated families, right?
Yeah.
You think about that. You've got kids, I've got kids.
Yeah.
If we never had the chance to see our kids ever again, what would that would be devastating, right?
I don't know how they can move on knowing that they've left them behind.
Exactly.
Maybe they had the hopes of be able to bring them up once they got established up here.
Yeah, and there was after the Emancipation Proclamation in the U.S., we saw a bunch of the families from Canfield, for example, the Harpers, which are an interesting story themselves. Some of them emigrated back to the U.S., and we don't know for certain at this point why that happened, why they went back. It's, again, from my perspective, it seems weird that you would want to go back there. But if you've got family there, then maybe that's the motivating factor. But a lot of the families that were in the Canfield area had members who went back to the U.S. and started new lives over again, I guess, in the States. To me, it's just fascinating just to think about the efforts involved. I think about Lucy. She must have been a formidable woman, coming up, by foot for the most part, due north to the Lake Erie shore in Ohio there, and crossing on a schooner and making her way to Niagara from down near Amherstburg. It must have just been, is it any wonder they founded a church when they got here?
Yeah.
They would have had to have pretty strong faith to carry them through that, right?
Yeah, because that is quite a distance to travel with a lot of uncertainty if they're actually going to make where they want to go.
Quite a distance to travel today in a car.
So with this docuseries, what do you hope? What are your plans for it?
Well, I've been really fortunate, and I'm really grateful to have been able to work with Bell Media on the production of it. So they financed the production of it, and they are hosting it on Bell 5 TV1, which is a video on demand service available to Bell subscribers. We're also going to host it on our own Windecker Road Films video on demand service through Vimeo, and that sort of, what I want to do is make sure that everybody in the local area who've been so supportive of the project are able to get a chance to watch it. So due to licensing things, I can't do that immediately. It'll take a little bit of time, but people can sign up to the Windecker Road Films mailing list, and that's where I put all of my updates as they come. There's still a plan to get it with another broadcaster, get it on TV somewhere else. All of these things take time, but that's what I do.
Pretty amazing.
That's what I do as a producer.
Yes.
Make phone calls, send emails, you know how it goes.
So coming from a larger community down to Haldimand, what changes or what did you find about living out here now versus in the city?
Obviously, the pace of life is different here, right? I would say it's a better sense of community here. Like, everybody knows you, you know everybody. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to be established into that community if you're new, if you're coming from a larger center. But I think it's a welcoming community, and you look at the people who are leaders in this community, such as John Edelman, the owner of Haldimand Motors. John's been in this community forever and has done so much for this community and has built his business here. He's one of the people who really welcomed me and accepted me, and I've always been really grateful for that.
Graeme, so with taking these types of productions, there must be a fair bit of cost involved in this. How do you go about getting one of your ideas off the ground?
Well, I've really been fortunate to be supported in Canfield Roots specifically, by some of the local businesses and the local municipality. Haldimand County has been very supportive to me working on Canfield Roots. Also, Erie Mutual Insurance stepped up to the plate and sponsored the entire series, and Haldimand Motors as well.
That's amazing.
John saw the value in this as something that we can use to portray what this area is like to people outside of the area. as much as we should all be proud of the stories that are in Canfield Roots, this is a great opportunity to put that out beyond this area to people who are connected to those stories, or who can be connected or want to be connected to those stories, to say this is what Haldimand is like. So John saw the value in that, and I'm eternally grateful whenever the local businesses and local organizations want to help support me. So I'm so lucky to be able to access that stuff.
Well, I want to thank you, Graeme. It was very interesting. We're just about to pull back into Haldimand Motors lot. We have talked about a lot of great stuff through these different car conversations. Yours in particular has been very interesting with the local community, which is I think a lot of people are going to be find fascinating that there was that type of group of people here in this area that we didn't know about.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you for having me. This car conversation has been great. You're a great interviewer, Damon. There's only one thing.
One thing?
We should have stopped for a burger.
Yes, we should have stopped for a burger, because there's a lot of good places in this Cayuga area.
That's right. Next car conversation, Graeme and Damon go for burgers.